So welcome everyone. This is a quick webinar with one of our wonderful founders, Caroline Beckman.
Hello.
She is the CEO and founder of Nouri. Nouri is a 2019 portfolio company. And so everyone I think knows a little bit about Jumpstart, and so I'm not going to talk too much about that. We really just want to know about you. So Caroline, can you give us a 1-2 minute background?
Yeah. So Nouri is a brand right now that we just launched over the last year, and we're focusing on gut health solutions. But that's not where I started. Actually, I was born and raised in Northern California in Sacramento, and then went to school in San Diego. And a couple of weeks into college, I was about 17, got connected with a group of entrepreneurs who were actually starting a business in the beverage space, which was a cold pressed juice company. And so I didn't think much of it, thought of it kind of like as a fun intern during first year of college. And then it just took off. And the first year of that business, we did a few $100,000. The next year, about 10 million. The following year, about 30 to 40. So it was crazy growth. One of the quickest growing beverages. And all that being said, really good business growth and really good growth learning the health and wellness industry. So that's where my career started. Mm-hmm. And by the time I was about 19, there was a lot of good, bad, long weeks, 60, 70 hours a week. But I knew that this kind of, the way I describe it now is this intersection between advancing consumer health and business. That intersection is just my little favorite place to be. And so professionally, I knew that's where I wanted to spend my career. So since then, have been working on a number of different brands. I founded a couple. Some have done really well, some have not.
Which is key, honestly, to something that we picked up on very early in your application to Jumpstart. It was like, wow, she's been an entrepreneur for a long time, even though you are still relatively early in your career. But you've seen success, you've seen failure, and I think you've learned a lot from those failures.
No, the second company we started when I was 21, myself and a co-founder, and it didn't work. We ended up having the product on the market for 2 years and we took it off. And it did work in so many ways, but it didn't work in others. And that was the best experience, because you really need to go through that, I think, in some way, shape, or form. And then also, to your point, like right now, we were just talking about this, like with new businesses, the highs get really high and the lows get really low. And that's like the way that I would describe it. It's kind of like physical exercise. If you're doing a burpee, that's one of the hardest things you can do, right? Because it's high to low to high to low. And mentally, we're doing the same thing as entrepreneurs, especially early stage. So now, I think one of the things that I've been working hard on is like just staying level set. Don't let guys get too high, don't let us get too low. Celebrate, be upset, but don't let it get too crazy. So after that business, was able to invest and consult and advise a few, which was really fun. But I knew that I wanted to be an operator, and I knew that there's some huge issues that we needed to solve. And one of the ones that I journeyed through a bunch was my immune system just being shot like week after week after week, which then eventually it just gets your energy levels super, low. And so as I peeled back the layers, I realized, your immune system is located in your gut. And then all these other things are located in your gut. It controls weight. It was starting to have some really cool influence on the brain, the gut and the brain axis. Just like such cool things that I was learning. I was like, this is not a trend. This is not a fad. This is not a diet or a cool product or brand. This is a cornerstone of human health. Like if this doesn't get solved, we're going to continue to see disease rampant. And so I became really passionate about it and thought, okay, I could use my skill and my knowledge, my background of building products, and start to create a brand around building the right solutions for gut health. So that's where we've started. We've got 3 products right now, many more to come. But that's a little bit of the background of the story.
Awesome. And so Nouri now, huge announcement a few weeks back, launched nationwide with Whole Foods, which is really exciting. You're starting to roll that product out onto shelves. And so people that are on the webinar, you should be seeing that on your shelves in the coming weeks. But maybe just walk any entrepreneur that's listening in kind of through your process, starting the company. Obviously, you've had a great background of entrepreneurship and an experience being on early, teams. But what was your experience starting Nouri? Kind of what were the key foundational elements of the business that you wanted to establish? First and foremost.
I love this question. I think that first and foremost, most entrepreneurs the number one question is, how do you fundraise? And like, what do you do to get money? And such a good question. And then it's also, I always say, the hardest aspect of entrepreneurship.
Right.
And so I really do believe that. I believe that every fundraise is hard. If you're going to raise capital, there isn't like an easy fundraise, but it's also where...
Don't you wish there was an easy button?
Yeah, I wish there was some sort of button. No, but it honestly is, it's character building. And if you go into it with the right attitude, it's so awesome relationally, because you do meet great people, et cetera. It's just, it'll build your character, and you have to use a ton of wisdom and discernment to sort of navigate it. So in the past, I say that all to say, the first company that I was part of, Studio, we raised like over $100 million, huge financing rounds. Not at the beginning, but we were able to raise a lot of money. Our CEO is very good at raising money. And I think that just built my confidence, like, you can raise money. You know, and it was something that I realized a lot of people don't have that type of experience, and those types of conversations that I wasn't even like aware to or alert to, but I was just hearing every day, were all like with our lawyers and with investors and people that were writing $15 to $30 million checks. And so that became normal, which I think was good. Now, the problem with that is that we also had a few things that were just like numbing mechanisms, right? And when you have a lot of money, it numbs you in certain ways. So you're not as tight on budget. You're not as tight on the things that you should be. You're not as cognizant of your cost of goods if you're building a product. So I brought a lot of the good and the bad DNA into the second company. We over-raised money at high valuations, and we were always just kind of like, we'll catch up with it, we'll catch up with it. That doesn't work. We're seeing it left and right now, and the market's starting to level set, which I actually really appreciate. So going into Nouri, I had these kind of constructs of how far I wanted to get before I raised any money. And I think people, and I know there's like a million books on this and everything else, but I do think that sometimes we underestimate how far we can get. And so for me, it was, I wanted to have a product and whole supply chain set up. And I know that's crazy to say to people who aren't used to it, but that can be done now through not webinars, but videos. It can be done through phone calls. I did go to the factories, but it wasn't like it was a huge expense. It was a few $100s or less than $1,000. So, I mean, it really is something that you can set up if you're building a product a lot without raising money. So product and supply chain was one. The second was brand. I wanted to have some initial identity. That's not my strong suit, so I did pay someone to do some of that out of my pocket. And then the third thing was customers. And so I started calling on customers. So before we raised money, I'd gone to CVS, gone to Walmart, gone to Target, gone to Whole Foods, Vitamin Shop. We had gone to an array of people to get their opinion on what we were building. And then when we had initial conversations going and a few offers on the table, that's when I thought, okay, I need to get some people around me. And that's when I started to like really search capital. So the journey has been different each time, I guess, saying all that to say, but the best thing has been just putting myself around people who have done it a lot and getting very diverse opinions on, okay, when should I be raising, how much, from who, all of those things.
And that's something that I think stood out to the Jumpstart team, to me, when we were reviewing your application. And I get a lot of questions from entrepreneurs. What should I put in my application that's going to make me stand out? For you, what really stood out to me was your knowledge of your customer base and your target market. You knew exactly who was going to be buying the product or who wanted it and what the trends were. And you did that before you had any sort of real traction or fundraising. And so that type of mentality and work ethic of going and doing the research and building the brand and building the company on almost no resources is huge. And it can be done. I mean, you are the case for that. It can be done.
It can be done. You have to be organized about it and smart about it. But, you know, it's so interesting, especially one of the things that I've learned is just building these kind of health and wellness products. Go out and talk to someone. Like if we were to go outside right now, down to the street and just say, hey, they got a probiotics, most people are going to say yes. What are they? They have no idea. So when we look at like how crazy some of the, which is great technology of like personalized probiotics and the microbiome and all these testing kits, it's great and it's good stuff and I'm into it, but you have just lost your consumer. And so that was something that honestly we just went into stores, talked to people, you know, and it was free. It's not crazy.
It's free to do customer and market research. A lot of it is very free. Okay, so I want to talk about when you were starting that fundraising process. you found Jumpstart.
Yeah.
One, how did you find Jumpstart?
So I had just, been in this process of making this big move from California, from LA. So I've lived in California, born and raised my whole life. I did live in New York for a little bit, but I had been spending a ton of time in Atlanta. And so my family thought I'd lost my mind, but I decided, hey, that's where I want to live. That's where I want to plant and make home base. And most of my networks of fundraising were always on the coast. And so it was important to me. I didn't put pressure on myself that it had to happen, but it was important to me that at least I was intentional about looking at what groups were in the Southeast. And there's not a lot. And so when you start to dig in, it's very different. It's very different than when you're looking at the VCs in SF, LA, New York. And so I found you guys and I was like, this is really interesting. Yeah. And you guys' communications are tops. Like Gabe is so on it. And so
Gabe is on it. He's on the website. He's responding to emails. He's on
face
calls.
Pops up on the website. I'm like, hey, Gabe.
I love it. And Gabe is a very real person for people. Gabe doesn't like coming on webinars all the time.
He's great at writing blogs.
He's great at writing blogs, and he's in the office all the time. Okay, so that's how you came to Jumpstart. What was it that initially attracted you to us? Because I remember when we were, you and I did a call early in the application process, and I remember thinking like, wow, this woman is amazing, and she's got her shit together, and she has a plan, and it was very attractive to me. Yeah. I'm curious, what was it that attracted you to us?
Well, I've always been attracted to like new communities, new diversity of thought, new leadership. So a lot of my background was all in one vein of thought and one, which isn't a bad thing. And there's a lot of those guys that most likely will come into future rounds or that I'll work with or that I am working with here currently. But I was really, again, communication was the top thing that just stood out. And that's like the easy low-hanging fruit, but it's not that low-hanging fruit. It should be. I'm a huge communicator. I think that if you're bad at communicating, you're going to have a really hard time with everything else. Yeah. So with investors, we do our best with updates and all the different things. And, life is busy and fast, but it's still like non-negotiable for me. And so with you guys, again, Gabe just being right on it, jumping on phone calls, having very authentic relationships. I think that, the other thing was I was less concerned about sorting out all the negotiations of the valuations and all these things, which are big deals, but I was really, really concerned about team building because I knew we weren't going to raise a ton of money, and I knew that we already had a plan. So it was more so, who do we want on this team that's going to help put me under good leadership and put me under people that I can really learn from. And I felt like you guys, I felt like Vic had a really good understanding, and I was like, you know what, this is a really good group. And what's funny is that the way that kind of my career shifted, most of our leadership and our like largest shareholders to date are all from healthcare. Yeah. So they're not from consumer product goods, which I'm from. And I know that well, and I can tap into that, but they're all from healthcare, which has been so good for our brand.
And so I'm curious to know your opinion on how Jumpstart, being a healthcare specific fund and our investor base, a lot of experience in healthcare, our management team, a lot of experience in healthcare. How has that helped position Nouri kind of as you move forward and are continuing to build out products?
It's a really good question. For one, I need to spend more time with your guys' team. I feel like I could spend more time with hundreds in my life right now, but really I do. And I think that I'll learn more and more through it. But from the amount that I have spent, just really good conversations about exploring different channels that we wouldn't have thought of. Like, does the practitioner channel make sense? Okay, if it does, what is the cost need to be? Like stuff like that. And for right now, for our brand, it doesn't make sense, but it could be. And we're very aware that, as we look at like different life stages, like infancy, et cetera, there's a lot of good connection there and people that have been in the industry for decades. And then I think the other thing too, which is just near and dear to our business, is the research. And so right now we just concluded our first study in the Netherlands, which we're going to publish, and we're just entering the second study. And it's been refreshing for me to have people around us that have done those studies and know like, okay, should we go for a patent for this or not? Like, it make sense to, you know, publish that paper, or should we do, you know, some more IP around it before we publish it? Just things like that I wouldn't have known. So that's been really, really helpful too.
Cool. I always like keeping these relatively quick so that we have plenty of time for Q&A. So my last question, well, it's not my last about this, about Jumpstart, but really advice that you would share with entrepreneurs around finding the right partner, finding the right early investor. What would you recommend or advice that you would give to maybe any entrepreneur listening as they start thinking about bringing on early partners? Jumpstart isn't a fit for everyone. It's a great fit for some people, but what was it that you really thought about and made, you know, top priority when you were saying, these are the people I want to bring onto my cap table?
A couple of things. I would just say kind of the 2 rules, and these just came to mind. They're not like my long thought through rules, but be really prepared and be really honest. So I think prepared, like, make sure your deck's great and it's in good working order. Make sure that you've got financials and you can jump on a call at any time and defend them and know your numbers. Those are 2 things. Like, you're gonna have a really hard time raising if you don't have that cleaned up.
I could not agree more.
And like really prepared. And then the other thing is just be really honest. And that's like a struggle every single entrepreneur has, of like selling really hard, but also being really honest. That's a very hard place to be. So with that, like, one of the things that's an easy place to start with honesty is be really straightforward about your strengths and your weaknesses. And I always am super attracted to just people in general, but definitely have learned a lot about this as an entrepreneur, of people who put themselves under people way smarter than them, older, wiser, and that you have people around you that you let them be like the mirrors to your blind spots. And if you don't have that, like, strongly recommend it. Because through a fundraising process, it's really important. So that's kind of how I would go about it and approach it.
And I think you hit on something that's talked about a lot, but particularly between the relationship between founders and their investors, like founders having to find that healthy balance between confidence and ego and selling and just crushing it to being self-aware enough and coachable enough to say, wait, I actually need some help. I need people in the room that are smarter than me, and there are people in the room that are smarter than me. It's being able to strike that balance can be tough, but really important. But
it's also one of those things where it's like, we're all really good at things. We are. Like, we're created in different ways and we're all really good at things. And so what we should encourage, in my opinion, is go out and like tell us what you're really good at. Like, whatever that is, right? Your skill, like, go sell your skill and sell like what you're really, really good at, and be really, really honest about what you're not good at, you know? And like, that's, I think you can be just as strong in both fronts. So just saying, hey, that's not my lane. Like, I'm not a designer, you know? So I know, like, hey, that's not my lane. You know, there's certain things that
I'm going to pay someone to
and like certain things that I'm not. And so it's in, you know, all the detailed stuff. Like, I'm really good when I'm really focused on a financial model, but I really not good with all the detail and the like micromanagement of a team. And I'm not going to try and be really good at it. So, and then those things, when they cause issues, it's like, okay, that's a whole, we need a great COO, you know, just be intentional about having the conversation early and often. And I think that it builds trust within people. So that's what I'm in the thick of it right now, but one day at a time.
Well, good. Well, so I want to open it up to some Q&A, so you can submit your questions just through the Q&A feature here. We'll take a few questions. So, question here: obviously Jumpstart bought much more than money. Can you give us a few examples of smart and key people they introduced you to? Not names, just titles.
That's a great question. Well, first and foremost, a big deal is like, yes, tapping into a network, but first is just community in general. So one of the things that I really appreciated was just I've gotten to know the other portfolio companies, and that's huge. Where some of you are probably at on the front end of that, what that means is you should have calls with people and ask them their experience. I can jump on the phone with you anytime you want.
I encourage a lot of applicants, you know, if that's important to them, to let us know, and I'll connect them to our founders. I think entrepreneurs should check references on us. And so Caroline is a reference
for sure.
for me.
I mean, definitely that was, so first and foremost, starting with community, that's a big one, and it should be, right, before you start to ladder climb, kind of look from left to right. And then from just a resource standpoint, there's been a lot of heads locally in Atlanta healthcare that are in healthcare systems that we've chatted with, different people within hospital systems, some different people that have retail connections. So for us, we're a very retail oriented brand right now. And then there's been a couple of people within the community that we've done like digital calls and digital advertising kind of workshops with. So it's been, to be honest, pretty different, I think, for each of us in the portfolio, and kind of catered to like, hey, you guys know Nouri's retail, so that guy has a great connection with Walmart. Get on a call with him. Like, it's just, I think it's different per company.
And I'm glad that you said that, and that it's resonating with you. I would say to people listening, that's the approach that we take. We take a very, very tailored approach to each portfolio company. Caroline right now is really focused on getting product. I mean, it's CPG product, getting it
to shelf and
product to shelf right now. And when I think a lot of your success so far has been because of you and your skills.
It's not me.
And what's exciting is that Jumpstart was able to come in and help with a capital contribution and some general mentoring and making sure that you are looped in with the community. But I'm really excited for, as you grow, how our network, even our deeper, more strategic network can add value.
And that's what I'm excited about too. But I kind of wrapping around to the conversation on the front end, I saw that early on through getting to know you guys. I knew that I would work with them in 10 years. And hopefully we have like a great exit or something before 10 years. But if you're in a relationship with them for decades, are you okay with it? And the answer was yes. So it's you have to think through those things, I think, sometimes.
Okay, so in talking about the community, how often did you get to Nashville?
Oh, well, I'm in Nashville today.
She's here in our office today.
It just depends. It depends like where we're at in the business. Right now, I've been traveling almost every single day, so I haven't been in Nashville a ton. But as much as I can be, it's really nice. It's great to be around the founder retreats and summits have been great. I've made it to one. I didn't make it to another. Just depends on where you're at with your business. You got to roll your own schedule, but I would say the more time here, the better. So
we host 2 major events a year. There's onboarding for new companies, and then there's the Founders Summit. We try to get as many of the founders in attendance as possible. Caroline was at that moment stocking your warehouses with lots and lots of
I was packing pallets. So it's like sometimes you got to know the season you're in.
And so we try to make sure that you've got as much value out of that.
But like this week I'm here and I extended for an extra day to do something tomorrow with Vic. So it's kind of just depends. Depends on the season and what you can do.
Cool. All right, next question. How important is it to investors to have a 5-year vision and plan when you're raising a seed or Series A round? This is kind of a joint question for both of us. I think having a 5-year vision or even just a 1, 2, 3 year vision is really important. I think knowing conceptually where you want the business to go is really important because it will drive decisions you make now. Particularly, I like to think about kind of 5-year visions when you're fundraising. Because if your example, and I actually would like for you to touch on this, of like raising too much money at too high of a valuation too early can be really detrimental to a company and can kind of kill it. And so I think if you have that vision very early on, you can make some very wise strategic decisions, from the get-go.
I think it's less about the number of years and it's more so about the intentionality of thought. And obviously actions, letting actions speak louder than words. So what I would say is I am like an Excel planner, love a good plan, but budgets are meant to be broken. It'll never work out the way that you put it there. Everyone knows that. So it's less about the numbers of, digging into each cell. And I think it's more about the conversation. And this goes both ways when you're raising and when you're investing. It goes both ways of the logic behind why that number is there. So it's like, hey, if you're projecting that you're going to go from 0 sales to 10 million, how? And then if you're going to go from 10 to 50, how? You know, and I think that's like, you really have to have a well thought out plan. And it's less, again, about the years. It's more so about, to me, it wouldn't matter if it's 3 or 5 or 10. It's more so about, for us, for example, a direct example would be, are you going to go omni-channel and go into retail and online? Or are you just going to do online? Or are you just going to do retail? Those are the things that matter. So I would just say, like, focus on the bones and the main things that are going to deter the revenue or loss, and then go from there.
And you talking about kind of really the path or vision for customer and how you're going to your sales channels. There's, an article that just came out, actually, Columbus newspaper, another one of our portfolio companies, Script Drop. They had their model was to start by selling to smaller local pharmacies. And if they had only told that story on their application, we would have been like, the customer market is too small. They had the vision of, like, we're starting here because this is the fastest way to get to market. They're our fastest growing part of our business right now. But a huge part of the business is going to be tackling big box retailers and larger pharmacies. So having that vision, I think, is really important. Great questions, guys.
These are really good
questions.
We'll
take probably 2 more. So another one from Kevin. Did they introduce you to any customers or potential customers, perhaps key employees or resources?
Yeah, there's definitely been offers for all of that. My background was that this is my 8th year working with Whole Foods, and Whole Foods is our first customer right now. So I had that relationship. But you know what? The reality is that it was a different buyer than I've ever worked with before. And I guessed her email, first name, last name at Whole Foods. And CVS, I guessed the buyer's email. Walmart, guessed their email. So it's funny because everyone says, oh, well, you had all these connections from the past. And I knew how to work with the retailers, but I didn't know the person. We didn't hire a broker or anything else. So yes, I think that there are some really good customers, but I would never go into it with really any investor assuming they're going to get you the connect. I think it's really important that, you've got something that on its own will get the customer's attention.
And I think what helps is having, so for example, with Caroline's, it's been less of a focus on customer introductions. I think we're getting ready to get into the season of a lot more investor. So a lot of investor introductions are coming Caroline's way, because it's kind of a different, it's an angle more towards retail. I think where we're better suited to help is helping you think through the business model and your fundraising strategy and how can you attack the market versus specific customer introductions. So I would, Kevin, if you want to put that under, a label, that would be resources. And just kind of different value adds.
It's great questions.
Cool.
Awesome.
Oh, look about this. My dad is asking a question. Hi, Dad. Have heard of recent media reports about discrimination in the sphere of venture capital. Do you think your experience has been different in some way because of your gender?
Great question. Well, I answer this usually in that, first and foremost, I've had a really, really awesome experience as an entrepreneur. I've never felt less than or I've had a really good experience. So it hasn't been something that's been too challenging. I will say though, my personality is very, very energetic and very headstrong. And so that's not the case with a lot of female entrepreneurs. And I think that there is a lot of just a quality that we still need to work through. And we still need to work through. Women in general ask for less and kind of internalize more and work really hard, but just don't vocalize it as much. So I think that I haven't felt anything super strong in my own journey, but what I will say is that one of the biggest points that I think makes this better is not vocalizing it in an emotional way or in a way to get attention, but really focusing on how we can have these conversations in a very productive way, a very honest way, but productive. And so that will trickle down to venture, it'll trickle down to salaries, all of those things. So instead of it being a scream it, I don't even know if, having all the headlines is very productive. Sometimes it's just more productive to grab, someone and chat with them about it. So in venture, though, it is very, very, you have to be very forward, and men tend to be more forward than women. That's what we see. It is hard for women to raise more often than men.
Yeah, and
it's talk to the women that are raising larger funds. It's not like just the entrepreneur. It's really interesting.
Yeah, and I think as you see more women in partner roles within venture, that's changing a lot of the landscape. I mean, you're seeing more female or diverse founders being funded,
which is cool.
It's great, but I think the reality is that the market, both the venture capital market and founders in entrepreneurial communities, more women, more diverse founders are entering the space, and therefore, like, you're just seeing this dynamic. Yeah.
And I think here's the thing with any sort of equality, this is something I really firmly believe in. We don't pull one group up to push another down.
Right.
So, I mean, one of the things that is concerning to me is that we push one group up to push another down, and that's not the case at all. And so I think that's where it just comes into like more conversations, and like you're saying, like when you have male and female partners, it ends up being like this awesome mix of deal flow too. So cool. Great questions.
Yeah. All right. So we are going to end it here. We have a ton of questions, and we are always welcome to email us additional questions. You can reach out to Gabe on our website. He pops up right in the corner, but you can also reach us at contact@jsf.co.
Cool.
I want to close this though by asking you, Caroline, what is the most exciting thing we can expect from Nouri in the next year?
Well, we just launched Whole Foods nationally. So we're just really kind of obsessed with the consumer right now and just meeting a lot of the new consumers. That's really energizing. And then a lot of product development and research. So that will all be public pretty soon.
Awesome. So if you have questions about any of our portfolio companies, if you want to get in touch with Caroline, please, again, let us know. Our applications for funding are open year-round. We will be reviewing applications in the spring. So anything that's submitted to us prior to March 31st, that's a key date, March 31st. Anything submitted before then will be reviewed in the month of April, and we like to be pretty fast on our decision turnaround times.
Yeah,
right?
Very fast on funding, all the things.
So we try to be fast on funding, very communicative and responsive. So be sure to send us your questions if you have them. We love to answer them, and get your applications in, and call Caroline if you have additional questions. So thank you everyone for joining the twinning.
The twinning pair.